Mr. Kharbanda. I'm the Executive Director of the Hoosier Environmental Council. I have the privilege of moderating this panel on energy and transportation, and I'm pleased to be joined by Mayor Fetters of the City of Huntington, Dr. Bill Stitt, the Superintendent of Fremont Community Schools, right here in Northeast Indiana as well, and then Tim Maloney, our Senior Policy Director at the Hoosier Environmental Council. So I'm going to give a very brief overview on the energy front, then I'm going to hand this off to Dr. Stitt to present a localized perspective from the Fremont Community Schools, then Mayor Fetters will go, and then finally Tim will wrap us up. So, on the national front, when it comes to sustainable energy, things seem a bit grim, rather grim I should say, in the near term when it comes to sustainable energy. And in particular, what we have here is a map of the world, of course, and there's only one country that has not signed or ratified the Paris Climate Accord, and that is, unfortunately, the United States of America. Secondly, the central public policy at the federal level that we advanced a few years ago to try to deal with the greenhouse gas emissions challenge in our country was the Clean Power Plan, which, had it been implemented in its original form, would have reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by 2030 for all the power plants in our country. Janet McCabe, who was heading up the AIR program and is here somewhere, was one of the key heroes in making the Clean Power Plan happen. We appreciate her leadership. Unfortunately, under the current administration, this plan has suffered a rollback, and what can constitute a means by which a power plant can comply with the Clean Power Plan is drastically reduced. Whereas before, a power plant could invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy to bring down the greenhouse gas footprint. Now, the proposal on the table, not that it's been formally adopted, is one that would only apply to beefing up the efficiency of a given power plant. So again, it drastically reduces the compliance options for a power plant. The third piece is the fact that there's been a very aggressive increase in the leasing of our federal lands for gas, which once again, if you're looking at this from the standpoint of how do we facilitate renewable energy, that is not a good development either. Now, having said that, the good news here is renewable energy is ascendant. And there's probably nothing that better illustrates this than the analysis that the Lazard does every year, where it plots the price per megawatt hour, price per kilowatt hour of various different energy technologies. And as you could hopefully see, you now have situations where not just wind is beating fossil fuels, but in certain circumstances, in certain projects, solar is beating fossil fuels. So that's a huge breakthrough in the economics of renewable energy. In addition to just simply prices going down for renewable energy technologies, you also have the fact that despite the setbacks that we've experienced at the federal level, states have been pretty resilient in terms of the public policies they've passed. The principal driver for spurring investment in utility-scale renewable energy have been RPSs or RESs, Renewable Portfolio Standard or Renewable Electricity Standard. About 30 states in America have these. Several other states, including Indiana, have voluntary programs, but again, about 30 states have mandatory programs. And what that means is that you get an increasing percentage of your electricity from renewable energy over time. And so what is the upshot of the combination of really good economics for renewables and good state public policy? You have a situation where now 4 states in America, Oklahoma, Kansas, South Dakota, and Iowa, get 1/4 or more of their electricity from renewable energy. 1/4 or more. Pretty impressive. And that claim, that fact that I've just stated, actually applies to wind energy. But in addition, you are seeing a pretty rapid growth in terms of solar, which for many years was dismissed as not being economically viable in American power markets. But now you have a situation where California gets about 10% of its electricity from solar, And that's a big deal. You can't dismiss it and say, oh, well, that's a certain type of liberal or progressive state. California is either the 5th or the 6th largest economy in the world. So for it to be working in such a complex economy as California is very impressive as well. Now let's take a brief look at Indiana, both the good and the not so good. The good news, and I'm looking at this from the perspective of the last few years, is one of the great stories of the last few years is the rise of utility scale solar. I remember when I testified before the Indiana General Assembly for the first time around 2006, and I was testifying on renewable energy. And I got a lot of smirks when I talked to lawmakers about the potential for wind. And lo and behold, within the next couple of years after that testimony, we began to have massive wind farms show up in different parts of the state. Now, those smirks applied more recently to solar, and now we are seeing the rise of utility scale solar in Indiana. Let me give you a couple of facts here. One is that the Indiana Municipal Authority, which is the entity that oversees all the municipalities that are providing their own power to their communities, they now have 17 solar parks all across Indiana, and these are largely in rural places. A second development is the fact that you have American Electric Power, Indiana Michigan Power, covering large portions of northeast Indiana as well as east central Indiana. They have already built several utility scale solar farms, one of which is 15 megawatts. And then you have a proposal on the part of Veteran in southwest Indiana where they're proposing to build a solar utility scale farm on the order of 40 megawatts, a pretty big system. And finally, to top it all off, in addition to the municipalities being engaged, the investor-owned utilities being engaged, you also have rural electric cooperatives being engaged. And the biggest solar farm by far that is going to be built in the state of Indiana is going to be built by Hoosier Energy, which is the generation and transmission cooperative, big one in Indiana. They are in the works of building a 200 megawatt solar farm. Truly impressive. The second piece of great news is that you have a utility not in California or New York or Illinois, but in Indiana that is leapfrogging natural gas. So you all are aware from our previous attendance of reading the State House or simply by following the news that there has been a move away from coal all across the country, including here. And oftentimes utilities will then invest in natural gas. Natural gas does have about a 50% lower level of carbon emissions per megawatt hour or per kilowatt hour, but it has a lot of other liabilities like potential risks to groundwater that may arise from fracking, aggressive fracking. Now, what you have is a situation for NIPSCO, one of the largest utilities in Indiana, covering northwest Indiana, where they made an announcement just a couple of weeks ago saying we're going to leapfrog natural gas. We're going to go beyond coal and we're going to go beyond natural gas as well and invest in solar, wind, and battery storage. And they're going to do this plan, believe it or not, by the end of the next decade. And that makes NIPSCO, an Indiana utility that was heavily dominated by coal, becoming a real leader, interestingly, in this field. So this is another piece of great news. Now let's talk a little bit about the bad, and Tim is going to talk more about this, but to just note that no matter how swiftly we may make that transition from coal and gas to renewable energy and storage, no matter how fast it may go or faster it may go than we originally forecasted, the fact of the matter is we have a ton of liability, particularly in a state like Indiana, which has historically been one of the top 3 most dependent states on coal. And that legacy are coal ash dumps, for which there are 83 in the state of Indiana, overwhelmingly unlined, overwhelmingly uncovered, and therefore posing significant air and water risks. The other bad news here is that special interests continue to dominate public policy in our state. They trump the public interest, unfortunately. This is a very compelling example of the power of public policy and also the detriment of special interests dominating the public interest. There was an intense debate in 2014 around energy efficiency. We were a leader in the Midwest on energy efficiency for many years, actually thanks to a public policy that was adopted when Governor Mitch Daniels, a Republican, was our governor. And in 2014, without any analysis to really back it, any Indiana-specific analysis, the Indiana General Assembly repealed Governor Mitch Daniels' energy efficiency savings program, which was called Energizing Indiana. And the utilities claimed, well, no problem, our utilities are going to invest in energy efficiency because they have the economic incentive to. Well, this chart shows that within 1 year of implementation of that very controversial bill, which many groups here opposed, SB 340, there was a precipitous drop in energy efficiency investment. A similar, very unwise decision, which I know a lot of you were involved in trying to prevent from happening, was the enactment of SCA 309 in 2017. And what this does is it phases out the principal mechanism for incenting solar energy, rooftop solar in Indiana, called net metering, which is this public policy that if you are producing more electricity than you need, you get credited for the energy that is fed onto the grid by your meter dialing backwards. And unfortunately, again, net metering is going to be phased out over by 2022. It will no longer be in Indiana. And that was really driven by very bogus arguments on the part of, unfortunately, some special interest groups that, again, pretty fallacious arguments showing the power of the special interest over the public interest. Now, wrapping up here, I want to talk about 4 opportunities to advance customer-owned and community-owned solar energy. Why am I focusing on this as opposed to the other elements of sustainable energy? One is there's tremendous public enthusiasm for rooftop solar. What could be more exciting than generating your own clean, carbon-free power at your home, or at your place of worship, or at your small business? Second is there are diverse motivations. Some people are motivated because they are deeply concerned about climate change. Others are motivated because they believe in energy independence. In other words, rooftop solar or ground-mounted solar is the type of thing that brings in and garners strong bipartisan support. And finally, while there is great momentum towards utility-scale wind and utility-scale solar across America, and it's inevitable that these projects are going to blossom and grow because utilities see it in their economic interests, utilities see customer-owned rooftop solar as being a threat to their market, to their revenue, to their profits. And so it's important that we in this room and beyond advocate together for meaningful public policies that promote customer-owned solar and community-owned solar. So the first thing to be aware of, and this is something that Citizens Action Coalition and Sierra Club have been real leaders on, is to stop big fixed charge hikes, which is your electricity bill is composed of multiple parts, one of which is a variable cost and one of which is a fixed cost. The larger share of your electricity bill that's attributed to a fixed cost, the less incentive you have to invest in energy efficiency or renewable energy, because you're basically saying, well, it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter what I invest in, I'm going to be paying basically a relatively similar bill as someone who's not being a good environmental steward. So we urge people to be involved in rate cases where there is a proposal to make a significant increase in fixed charges. The second thing is we encourage you to talk to your utility, whether you are a member of an investor, you are a customer of an investor-owned utility like Duke or AEP or Vectren or NIPSCO or IPL. Tell them we want a community solar program. And briefly, what is community solar? It's this idea that if your rooftop is somehow not hospitable to solar, or it's too expensive for you, the idea is that there will be a developer who will build a big solar farm and you can buy shares in that solar farm. And so in that way you are getting part of your electricity from solar and you're credited that on your electricity bill. It's basically a debit on your electricity bill. Third opportunity, sense. Thank you. So third opportunity is to urge your lawmaker to help legalize third-party financing. So once again, solar, I can't believe there's a single person in this room who wouldn't want to go solar. But the question is, sometimes it's about technical things like whether your rooftop is amenable to it, and sometimes it's financial things, whether you can afford it. Third-party financing solves that latter issue because it provides a couple of different options by which you can invest in solar. Briefly, a lease payment option is one in which you're literally renting your rooftop solar panels from a developer and paying a fixed amount every month and getting a portion of your electricity from solar. And then a solar PPA or a solar power purchase agreement is one in which you're paying a certain amount in terms of cents per kilowatt hour for solar. And these deals are structured such that they are cheaper than you're buying electricity from your utility. So you can imagine why utilities would not want this. But we urge you to talk to your lawmakers and say, we want to see third-party financing legalized in Indiana. Finally, if you are a veteran of reading the State House, I should mention another thing we'd like to see is something called PACE financing, also known as Property Assessed Clean Energy. And the shortest way of saying it is that you allow a city or county to issue a bond, and the proceeds from that bond sale are used to provide low-interest loans to property owners, generally small businesses, that they pay back as a line item on their property bill. And because they're paying it back on their property bill, it means that if you don't fully recoup the investments that you're making in solar, the balance of what you owe on that solar project get carried on by the subsequent property owner. This is a public policy that has been adopted by every state around us. We got to do it. HEC, Hoosier Environmental Council, has been very involved over 3 different sessions to try to get this passed, and hopefully we can pull this off. Wrapping up here, I think it's important to talk about the economic stakes of what we're dealing with in terms of sustainable energy. What we're looking at is a map of Indiana in terms of per capita income. And as you can see, there are pockets of state that are definitely less wealthier than others. But it turns out that those areas of our state that are less wealthy are also places that are quite hospitable to solar energy potential. And the fantastic news here is that the fastest growing occupations in America are none other than solar installers and wind turbine technicians. It's pretty amazing. So the need is there in terms of trying to find new economic opportunities in economically depressed parts of Indiana, and the opportunities there in terms of the fast growth of these professions. But what's critical is that we need to develop the kind of public policy that will attract those jobs. While we are in the top 10 in terms of wind jobs in America, we are not in the top 10 in solar and in energy efficiency, but we sure as heck can be. So with that.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to speak at this meeting today. I am Dr. William Stitt, Superintendent and CFO at Fremont Community Schools. Unlike many of the other speakers today, I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in solar energy. I am a person that wanted to make a difference at Fremont Community Schools and the community of Fremont. I'm a person who looks at things and says, why not? Why can't we do this? And if you don't know Fremont, we are a very small district. We have under 1,000 students. It's up in the corner. We have a lot of lakes, which is very good. But just like every other school in Indiana, and I've been in Michigan, we have limited funds and ever-growing expenses. We started this journey in December of 2016 with a simple question: how can we save money? That's a picture of our solar field. I'll run through some pictures here. Thank you. It was an exciting time. Some of the other pictures here, our local paper, the Herald Republican. We even, one of the Fort Wayne News, Channel 15 came up one morning and did their morning announcements in our solar field. So we've had a lot of people visit, and it's been a good thing. Our story. The people who make up Fremont have always depended on sunshine to grow crops and bring visitors to our lakes and parks. Now we are counting on sun to power our schools. A decision by the school board members is allowing the sun to subsidize shrinking budgets and bolster educational opportunities for our students. I would be lying to say if it went without little hiccups. There were issues. We were one of the very first in Northeast Indiana to do a solar field. It took months of meetings, of conversations, of talking to a couple schools in southern Indiana that had solar fields. And the night of the vote, I thought it would pass 4-3. It did pass 7-0, and it was good, yeah. Because when you go into it thinking you're going to get a vote of 4-3, well, one vote says no, and we don't have a solar project. Today, if I had all 7 of the school board members here, and they're all still on the board, so no one got voted off because of the solar field, they would vote unanimous 7-0 again. A little bit about our project. Our power comes from 5,616 solar panels. They were installed by Encore Construction Services Midwest and its subcontractors. Encore is also our energy saving contractor, so the partnership was a great fit, which allowed us to move a little faster to have the project done. Our solar field produces up to 1.8 megawatts of direct current, or, and again, I'm not an expert, 1.4 megawatts of alternating current, AC current, which powers our buildings and our homes. Our solar field produces enough energy to power 230 homes for a year. So, thank you over there. Thank you, sir, for that. And then I think some of the solar fields coming up, 40 megawatts, producing enough energy for whole towns. Now, 230 houses might be about the town of Fremont. So we lease the equipment. It's on a 20-year fixed rate, costing us approximately the same or less than we were paying for our electric bills already. So there was no new taxes, which was a huge benefit. I was telling people I ate lunch with, we had 2 ladies come to a school board meeting to say they didn't like the solar field. After the ladies talked, we had passed a referendum about 5 years ago, and it raised taxes. Now, Fremont is in the bottom 10% of tax rates for schools in the state of Indiana. So they came, they talked, and it came back down to, you're going to raise my taxes. And once explained, it's no new taxes. We pay somewhere between $24,000 and $30,000 a month for electricity for Fremont Community Schools in our buildings, in our schools, in our football fields. And so we're taking that money and just earmark it to our payment for the solar field. And it's over 20 years. We, net metering, getting paid for putting power back on the grid was also an attractive attribute as well, even though we do use much of the power that is produced. The project also included a major lighting retrofit and the installation of 3,348, yes, I have counted each one of them twice, and that's not much, LED lighting kits in our schools. Our original plan was to create a solar field a little bigger. Now we wanted to be, I don't want to say greedy, but we wanted to put more on the grid. We knew that just like today, we're not producing a whole lot of energy. So we wanted those summer months to really subsidize the winter months. Our utility company told us that we had to make it this big, and we had to follow their directive. Our long-term savings is projected that Fremont Community Schools will make approximately $6.2 million in the next 25 years in realized and avoidable costs. $6.2 million. That's substantial. As I said before, our solar project, our monthly electric bills were between $24,000 and $30,000. When we finally got the solar field on, it was this past April, our electric bill was a whopping $24. And that's one of the reasons the board says, hey, yeah, let's do that again. Now, as we go into the winter time, our electric bills will go up because we're not producing as much because of the sun and those things. And that's what it is, but we're still saving money. On the educational side, teaching students that stewardship of Earth is a fundamental relationship and important part of education. The solar field has been supported by the community as a wise investment that not only generates considerable financial savings, but also provides our students a glimpse at their alternative energy-powered future. Going solar also offered our students a valuable educational opportunity. As one of the first school systems to go solar in northern Indiana, the solar field has given teachers a reason to teach related lessons on science, technology, engineering, and math. One of the greatest educational tools is a kiosk placed in every school. These kiosks show how much solar power we are producing every second of every day, how much electricity we are using, and other related details. Our students can walk by the kiosk and say, we are producing this much and using this much. We're making money. And that's a great thing. Our science teachers have taken our classrooms to the science field to do experiments, to do those things. One of my greatest, and it was one of my science projects, is when we had the solar eclipse. Now you would think it's still sunny outside, it's still light outside, we still should be producing energy. We didn't. It dropped more than 3/4 during the solar eclipse, which was very educational for our students to see the difference in that system. One of the biggest benefits of the solar power system to our community is the reduction of environmental impact. As a renewable, clean energy, solar power has significantly reduced the production of pollutants and harmful greenhouse gases. I would invite everyone in this building to come visit Fremont Community Schools and see how the solar field is working. Still very much prevailing in our Midwest culture is the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This age-old wisdom presented an uphill battle when it came to making a reasonable, sustainable decision to become good stewards of our school funds. However, as solar energy best practices develop and more local data is available, I believe our solar field will be applauded for its progressive decision making. My goal for you, don't be afraid to explore the possibility of a solar project in your homes, in your schools, in your churches, in your areas of business. I know I might not be superintendent in 40 years or even 20 years, because I'm pretty sure Fremont Community School doesn't want an 80 to 100-year-old superintendent. But I do know that whoever's the superintendent at Fremont Community Schools will have the benefits of a project that I started in 2016. A couple things. We were one of the lucky ones. Our project was started and finished before Senate Bill 309. That's something that we need to change. And that's something that all of us can change. I know that Indiana is not a leader in solar energy, but the state has been making significant strides towards energy dependency over recent years. The passage of Senate Bill 309 may halt any real progression from taking place in the residential solar sector. Senate Bill 309 moves the power, as you know, from net metering to sell all, buy all system, meaning the homeowners with solar on the rooftops won't be allowed to use electricity they produce themselves. Instead, they have to sell it all back to the electric company, and then they buy it back. They sell it for a lower price, buy it back for full retail price. I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. And what we're asking for is just to be fair. To be fair of what we can do. And I won't say who our utility company is. I know they want to make money. But I know that I want to save money and do it my way. And for this one, we won. But so many other people are going to lose because of a decision made by our legislators. And so, can I ask you to make that call? So what can you do? Learn about solar energy. Some of the two sites that I pulled up, framethegrid.org or Solar Power Rocks. I love solar power rocks. Engage, votesolar.org. And I beg you to contact your state and federal representatives and demand good net metering policies. We need to bring back the net metering policies before the passing of Senate Bill 309. And of course, go solar. Save money, save the planet. Your grandkids will thank you. I hope in 40 years the next superintendent, if I still can remember, would thank me. So thank you for inviting me. Again, I'm William Stitt. Information up there. Please come visit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stitt. Dr. Stitt and Mayor Fetters share in common the reality that when things are showing paralysis at the national level, here they are being great innovators in their communities and making major change and inspiring a lot of people, as I could tell from the applause. So with no further ado, we'll turn it over to Mayor Brooks Fetters from the city of Huntington to talk about his innovative work in water and transportation.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's always fun to be the first team after lunch, but fortunately you're not all carved up, okay? I've never had a vegan meal in my life. It was fabulous. Let's give them a hand. That's great stuff. I didn't miss my pork chop and my prime rib, so they're good. Just a shout out to the back corner. Stand up, Trine and DeClaw back there. Got some young leaders with you today. It was my privilege to break quinoa with them back there a little earlier. And in case you have never seen a moderate Republican, take a picture. They're a rare breed, and I didn't wear my Ike and Ford button today, but nonetheless, if you need to get a picture of what one is. The other thing that you need to know about me is I am the only politician in the room that will not speak to you out of both sides of his mouth. Because I can't. Not that I won't, but I can't. So, in case you're just kind of looking here like a bunch of first graders, why does his face do that? I'm aware that it doesn't work. So, thank you. I'm Brooks Fetters, and I serve as the mayor of Huntington, Indiana, which is 20 miles upstream. We are 20 miles downstream from Fort Wayne on the Little River that ties into the forks of the Wabash and the Wabash River, which, as I tell all my first and second grade students that come to the city building, you need to remember the phrase, do unto those downstream as you would like those upstream to do unto you. And so We live by that motto. We have a great heritage. This whole Midwest crossroads of America, Northeast Indiana is just a great place to live, work, play, and learn. I want to welcome you to our little part of the state, our little part of paradise. The last question I have before I get started, are there any elected officials in the room? Of all the elected officials in the room, are there any mayors? Where are you from, sir? North Vernon, great town, stellar city as I recall, right? Fantastic, good to have you here. I am glad to have at least one other mayor in the room who will have a brotherhood as I speak just for a few minutes today. What you see up on the screen is an adaptive reuse of an old railroad bridge. The Erie Railroad that runs from New Jersey to Chicago, or used to, got taken out, and a number of years ago, we took, you're not seeing it? I see it, but you don't. There we go. You see a big black bridge with yellow letters on it? Fantastic. Thank you. I am not a technophile. But anyways, we wanted to get our citizens engaged with the river. The Little River is part of the connection between the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Gulf of Mexico. The Miami Indians controlled the long portage between Roanoke and Fort Wayne for many years, and it is a major crossroads to get from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico for millennia. We are at the heart of that, and we're also a transportation center. At one time, Huntington had 4 railroads crisscrossing through it. Now we have 1. But we wanted to make sure that our citizens, according to our comprehensive plan, had the opportunity to enjoy the Little River in Huntington. That's the one that flows through us from the southwest part of Fort Wayne. We also are privileged to have the Wabash River, which flows south of the city, and the Little River flows into that on the west side of the city, and then on stream down to Wabash and Peru and Logansport and all other kinds of great places. This was a $500,000 bridge to nowhere. Mayor, have you ever built a bridge to nowhere? I don't recommend it. It's not something that typically gets you reelected, but fortunately, we had this bridge, we rehabbed it, and now it is a part of a continuous 7-mile trail section that we have in place. We did this for 2 things. One, to get people alternative transportation, get them connected with nature around our community, but we also now launch 3 river cleanups a year from this site. And so we've got people that are so in love with the Little River and the Wabash, Upper Wabash territory 3 times a year. What you'll see here is a section of trail that goes along Riverside Drive. It is one of the older neighborhoods in our community. It also goes right along the river, as you can see there. If you look way in the background, you'll see the bridge. This got completed, and we have now seen a new level of prosperity on Riverside Drive in downtown Huntington. Another project that we've done that it has to do with sustainability. Back in the 50s, when everybody was building 4-lane highways, the Joni Mitchell song, Big Yellow Taxi, tear down paradise and put up a parking lot. They put 4-lane roads not always where they needed them. This is one that we truly assessed a couple years ago and did not need. And so we did what is called a road diet. And we took 1 service lane out eastbound going toward Fort Wayne, and we built a trail. And that trail is connected. It is used all the time. I have people that tell me constantly, no one's going to use that. Now, I didn't get it today on here, but I'm constantly taking pictures of people not using the trail. And we have planted over 58 trees. We're in our 23rd year as Tree City, USA, and just recently spoke with a young lady from Marion about becoming a Birdtown, USA. This is a LED light, I'm told. The city of Huntington had a number of tired old city services buildings, whether it was fire stations or street departments or police stations, water filtration plants, water pollution control plants, and we have retrofitted all of them or rebuilt all of them with the latest technology and efficiencies, and we have seen dramatic reductions in our electric consumption. Last but not least, I just want to speak a little bit about adaptive reuse of structures. We are the last remaining city in the state of Indiana to own a landfill. Most cities got out of the landfill business. Anybody here from IDEM? Good. We are the last city in the state of Indiana to own a landfill, and it is going down the end of March. We're going to stop receiving trash. It is just something that small municipalities need. Most of them got out 20 years ago. We need to get out of it now. There have been some compliance issues, and truly IDEM helped us walk through just a whole Pandora's box that I walked into 7 years ago when I became mayor. And but what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to fill it with architectural gems. And so this particular building that you see are three buildings. One is an old denominational headquarters for the United Brethren Church and Huntington University. The two, as you look at it to your left, are the Oddfellows Halls. How many of you used to have an Oddfellows in your community? Usually they managed cemeteries, took care of widows and that sort of thing. Got in trouble back in the early 70s and no longer really function. And so these buildings, ever since I was a child, which is 50 years ago, have been a source of blight and problems in our downtown community. And we have been able to partner with the Regional Partnership of Northeast Indiana and also with the Regional Cities Program that Governor Pence put out before he went to Washington. And we participated in that $42 million matching last dollar in that came to Northeast Indiana. And $1.8 million is going into this adaptive reuse of 37 market rate apartments, the Huntington University Entrepreneurship Center coming downtown, and the launching of the LaFontaine Arts Council Community Arts Program in downtown Huntington, right next to our courthouse. These buildings aren't in our landfill, and they continue to be a testament to the beauty of architecture from over a century ago. This is why you don't tear down old buildings. What I'd like to leave you with is this. As you talk with your elected officials and you continue to promote change for the good of our community, my background is pastoral ministry and funeral service. I'm not a lifelong politician. But what I do understand, having served on city council and now 7 years as mayor, is it does take people in elected office who have the political will, the moral authority, and the administrative ability to move communities to a better place that the citizens aren't even really sure they want to go to. That's kind of a lot like a pastor, moving people to a place that they're really not even sure they want to go to. That's what it takes. It takes city councilmen, it takes county commissioners, it takes city mayors, and it takes town boards to do the right thing. As was mentioned by Dr. Stitt, we are stewards of this environment. And we need to take care of it because it's not ours to squander. It's ours to move forward into the hands of the next generation of stewards. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you so much, Mayor Fetters, for your leadership and your community, showing the sustenance of the moderate Republican, to use your words. And I'd like to introduce our last speaker, who's none other than Tim Maloney, our Senior Policy Director. Tim leads our Wildlife and Land Program, and he's going to give a overview of kind of the state of transportation in Indiana right now. As I look at the clock, it looks like we may not be able to get to Q&A, but the good news is that we've got 2 different breakouts which would allow you to delve deeper and allow an opportunity for some of our solar experts in the crowd to also contribute, including Leah Feld here from the Michiana Area County Council of Governments. So I will turn this over to Tim.
Thanks, Jesse, and thank you, Mayor and Dr. Stitt. Appreciate your remarks. I'm going to give you a quick overview of transportation, what's going on at the federal level, state level, and some really good stuff going on at the local level in Indiana. And Hoosier Environmental Council has long been involved in transportation policy towards the goal of having a more balanced multimodal transportation system, one that's friendlier to energy and natural resources and provides more choice for people who travel. So that's the underpinning of why we're very interested in transportation. Starting at the high level in Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of disarray in transportation policy and a lot of talk about a new national infrastructure policy, but nothing's been really happening with that respect for a number of years. And one of those reasons is that there is a lack of disagreement on how to pay for our infrastructure programs. For a number of years now, the Highway Trust Fund that pays for roads and transit has been propped up by transfers from the National General Fund. And so there's a need to find a more dedicated, sustained source of funding. And that's not happening in DC, and we're even at the point where the Department of Transportation is not passing along appropriated funds for local transit projects, and it's really has a lot of local communities at risk of great uncertainty about light rail and new bus projects that have been planned, yet expected federal money's not coming through, and it's not clear why that's not happening. And then finally, I'll mention one good point of policy at the federal level is that many of you may know about the Tiger competitive grant program that was started under the Obama administration, and that program is still in place. The new administration has changed the name to BUILD, the BUILD program, although the president had proposed zeroing out funding for that. Congress in the last appropriations bill actually tripled funding for that to $1.5 billion. And these are competitive grants for not just roads, but bridges, transit, trails. Highly popular program that's done a lot of good work all over the country, and that's something that should continue. And then just to talk about the change in control at the United States Congress, we have this recent statement from Representative DeFazio, who will be involved in transportation policy and the Transportation Committee for the U.S. House of Representatives on behalf of the Democrats. And he's pointing out that it's not a question of really redesigning some good national policies, it's about providing proper funding. I already mentioned the BUILD program, and let's move on to some things going on in Indiana with transportation. Governor Holcomb earlier this year announced a new program called Next Levels Connections that is going to provide new funding for roads, for broadband, for a fourth port for Indiana, the South Shore Railroad in northwest Indiana, and also for trails. And really a remarkable amount of money is coming through Crew for Trails through this program, which has raised about $1 billion from increasing the tolls on heavy traffic on the Indiana Toll Road. And this program, Next Level Connections, is allocating $90 million to trails over the next couple of years, and we anticipate that's mainly going to go to local governments and nonprofits for greenway and trails construction, with the opportunity for some money going to the state of Indiana and state-owned trails like you find at state parks. So to quickly talk about some of the good things happening on transportation at the local and regional level. In Indianapolis, the city is building the first all-electric bus rapid transit route in the country called the Red Line. It'll be a 13.5-mile route from Broad Ripple on the north side of Indianapolis to the University of Indianapolis on the south side, with the potential for extending that route both to the north and the south. And it's something that our organization and a very broad-based partnership in Indianapolis worked to get adopted and to get and to bring a referendum to local voters to help pay for this, that passed very solidly in 2016. So that project is under construction as we speak. In northwestern Indiana, I mentioned the South Shore commuter railroad that goes from Chicago to South Bend. There are expansion plans in the work for the South Shore, both a double tracking project to allow the trains to operate more efficiently going east and west between Gary and Michigan City. And then there is also a proposal to extend the South Shore to the south towards Dyer and pick up more commuters from the south part of Lake County, and even some discussion about it going over to Valparaiso in Porter County. Also, the Hoosier State line is still alive and well, and hopefully to be funded again in the coming biennial budget. That's the line, the passenger rail line that runs from Indianapolis to Chicago. Some really exciting things going on here in Northeast Indiana, where a coalition has been working to bring passenger rail back to northern Indiana and to Fort Wayne. The Northern Indiana Passenger Rail Association has done great work to take this idea from just a concept to a project that's actually in the planning process. They've raised a lot of money for studies, a feasibility study, a business plan, and now pre-National Environmental Policy Act planning that's underway, and just built a tremendous coalition among business leaders and communities all the way from Chicago to Columbus, Ohio. So it just shows the power of committed people working towards a really important goal and building a coalition to get that done. And then finally, a little bit more about trails. I mentioned the new state funding coming for trails, and lots of good stuff going on in Northeast Indiana with the regional cities plan that was adopted by this region and provides for a lot of trails work. And one of those is this visionary trail called Pokabash that connects Pokagon State Park to Wabash State Park in Bluffton, and will be part of a connecting trail for a Northeast Indiana regional trail system called United Trails of Northeast Indiana, and eventually will bring a trail connection down here to Wabash. So a lot of great work being done in this part of the state on trails and transportation. So to wrap up, what happens next? As Indra mentioned earlier, we're approaching a budget session for the Indiana General Assembly where the budget for the Department of Transportation will be adopted, and in that budget there will be discussion of state funding for local transit systems, what's known as the Public Mass Transportation Fund, which has been kind of static for a number of years at about $43, $44, $45 million a year, but it's an essential state funding support for local transit systems. The continuing appropriations for the Hoosier State passenger rail service will be under consideration, and I don't know if there's going to be any discussion or effort on state support for the Columbus to Chicago route, but certainly that's moving ahead without a lot of state financial support to this point. And then finally, what we'll talk about a little bit later is a conservation funding proposal that will also benefit trails funding. So that's the real high-level, quick overview on sustainable transportation policy in Indiana and what to expect next. And you can also expect the council to be actively involved in making sure that we have a more balanced and environmentally sustainable transportation system. Thank you.